knowledge, so like there's no way to find out like who's the best. Let me get you to sit like, I don't know, like right, sure, let's get you right there. Put that microphone, maybe we'll move this over. Actually, I don't understand why I didn't do that angle in the first place. I get to see all of you and everything. And then, what is this red line? How come I'm doing this? Stop, pause.
So now when we grapple, I usually get the best of him. But, you know, if you make a mistake, you're fucked. Because he catches you, like, you know, his submission rate is pretty high.
So he was also a cage fighter too, right?
Yep, he has like, I think 3 or 4 fights altogether, maybe more, maybe he has more.
Did you fought too, right?
Yeah, I have 10 amateur, 3 pros, and then I have 3 unsanctioned fights.
What's that, like alleys?
No, the Knockout Factory used to have these fights like in Salamanca in this cage, and it was before I even fought amateur, and it was just pro rules, and it was just like you weren't saying it wasn't sanctioned in New York or on the res at the time.
So like, what were you guys doing? Like,
there's cage fights with judges and stuff, just it wasn't sanctioned or like a foreseen event because the guy was just a millionaire and held his own fights.
Did you guys have to sign like waivers and shit? No. What year was this in?
That was like 4 and 5, 04, 05.
So you were fighting before it was like cool to fight?
Yeah, and then actually when we first started fighting, like Danny Balin and we'd fight like, I remember one time I went to a fight and my opponent weighed in 20 pounds heavy, like didn't even try to make weight. And another guy's opponent got drunk at a bar and arrested the night before. So his opponent didn't even make it to the show, so we just fought each other because we're both 155. Now, and that was the day of the fights. Now you have to have the finalized card in by Thursday.
What are you fighting now? Like when's the last time you had a fight?
MMA fight. My last one, my last 2 were September and November of 2012. And I've done a ton of pro like submission fights, but they're just like it's like a wrestling. They're like just submission matches. It's not MMA. That's all I do now.
Do you get paid for that?
Yeah. Fight to win pro is pretty cool. You show up, you get so much if you win, so much and then it doubles if you submit the guy.
Let's get this intro in. I think I picked a pretty appropriate song.
You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
How's that?
This is old school.
Yeah, I've been recording for a little bit. Not right after the previous thing. I just like to lie to people because it's like it's kind of hard to like when I do this. Like I've made so many mistakes. Like the one I did with your friend Rod Hugas.
Yeah.
Was like click record and we stare at each other and then it gets like really awkward. And what I do is I wouldn't let it play out. So I would I would get to like 45 minutes and I'm like, okay, that was really good. I'd wrap it up and then I sat there and talked to Rob for like another hour and he was telling me about how he like fucking walks out in the lake and like hatchets a hole in it and like swims in it in like fucking December.
He actually has a picture like somewhere up in Plattsburgh or somewhere up in the middle of nowhere in Adirondack where he literally found the spot and then he went back to his vehicle and got a hatchet. And I don't even know if he had a hatchet. I think he went to like some convenience store like miles away.
There was a video, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cuts a hole in there and then gets down in this thing. He's nuts, dude.
Yeah, he's an absolute psychopath. But what's his cage record like?
I don't even know. I know he fought a bunch in Burlington. The head professor of our association, Julio, had his own like fight league. And I know Rob fought a bunch of times for him. I don't know exactly what his record was overall.
Straight out of Compton. All right, that is NWA. Oh fuck! I wanted to have fuck the police. Oh fuck! I fucked up. Whatever.
You didn't go long enough. Was it in there?
No. That's a different song. Straight out of Compton. I thought it would have been better to have fuck the police because you're a cop. But anyway, it'll work. What the hell was I saying? The reason I want to have you on is because of what you're doing for law enforcement now with the self-defense and everything like that. I think it's pretty important. And what a lot of people don't realize about cops is like part of your job is getting in a fight on a regular basis, like you're actually fighting people. And so just get into like what you do and like how you travel around and like how you prepare cops and go to different enforcement agencies.
It's evolved a ton since like 2011. So like back in 2009, 10, I was like, oh, I want to do like some jiu-jitsu for police stuff. And I was still like white and blue belt, but like no one trained at that time and everyone was, you know, just using old like Aikido stuff and pain compliance stuff. It just fails all the
Yeah.
time. So we started training more jiu-jitsu based stuff for police work and being able to control people. So like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, any sort of grappling, that what you do is you control a human being with 100% resistance. Like when you come to jiu-jitsu, we spar, and like you're 100% trying not to let me submit you or control you, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Where in some of these other martial arts, that's not necessarily the case. It's more of like drilling and katas and pain compliance. So we've seen that fail. So we wanted to start changing over to the control tactics. So we started doing it back in like 2009, 10. Finally, my chief said, hey, once he took over as the chief, he's like, redo the program. So we redid the program in Jamestown, and it was more control tactics based. And then I was hitting up the NYTOA, which is a big conference out at Turning Stone Casino, and just was like, hey man, I'd love to come instruct like some jiu-jitsu for police stuff. And Josh Roth and I started doing, and Joe Anacato started doing just some like jiu-jitsu for police, like small seminars, and people were loving it. So it just like kind of stemmed from there. And I wasn't even like, looking back, I wasn't even good at jiu-jitsu back then. Like,
but it makes a substantial amount of difference. Like this is why I always try to tell people, like I have Clinton Correctional Facilities where I grew up, and they, I don't want to talk poorly about the system in place for the correctional whatever, but you know more than anybody, you can't just go to a fucking 2-month-long course and be a professional at this. Like, it's a lifestyle, and like, around the bonfire, there's a lot of COs that are, I said, all right, let's go, let's roll around. And, this is something you need to make a lifestyle. This is something that you're not going to learn. I'm not going to give you the right position. No. I'm not going to.
It's going to be live resistance.
You ever see King of the Hill?
Yeah.
You remember Dale's like, all right, put your hand here and here. Like, it's not the way it's going to go. This is,
That's the biggest problem in the profession, in the culture that we call it changing the culture now. That's our like motto. Yeah, we're trying to change the culture, get guys to train outside of work on their own dime, because the departments, whether it's corrections or police, they're all hand in hand as far as like someone's fighting, you got to fight with them. The only difference is in a correctional facility is they're not always bringing a whole gun belt full of weapons into this fight. So now that changes the aspect from your sport jiu-jitsu and your sport wrestling to now, hey, every time we're fighting, I have a taser, I have pepper spray, I have a live handgun.
Yeah.
So now I have to be able to retain all that. I have to not be able to let him grab that. I have to be able to present it at the right times if I need to. The unknowns of you and I are in a cage fight. We're in a cage with a referee. You knock me out, the ref's stopping it. We don't have to worry about you and 5 of your other buddies, but you and a buddy getting in a bar fight and the cops come to break it up, and now you guys are good friends again because one of you's getting arrested. There could be 3-4 more guys jumping in on us. So it's like the unknown of law enforcement and police work is the biggest thing guys don't understand. Like I always tell people, the mount is a phenomenal position. In wrestling, you throw your boots in the mount, you lift their head, you probably pin the guy and stick him. But in jiu-jitsu, you get mounts, 4-point move, you start signing up your submissions from there. But in police work, if I have a gun belt on and I mount the guy, when you roll with those first white belts or wrestlers that have never trained before, what do? There's 3 responses you get from the untrained guy. They try to push you away, which doesn't work. They try to just hit you, which isn't going to work. Or they just grab a hold and try to survive. So now if that guy that doesn't train is giving me that response, that's what we get on the street, is that untrained response. So I mount the guy and he just wraps me around my waist. I can't get to my gun. I can't disengage. So now his buddy comes running out with a knife or gun. I can't get to my gun. I can't move off. So we've implemented from now going from just control tactics to implementing the rules of the unknown real world out there. We're fighting in conditions of rocks or barriers or whatever with gun belts on. So it's just been like a whole evolution in like the last couple of years. I've really been putting in now, how do we wrestle and do jiu-jitsu with weapons? Because every fight we get into, we bring weapons to.
Can you explain? I don't know what you mean exactly.
So if I'm gonna say you're the suspect and I have to come and arrest you and you're gonna fight me and we're in a fight. Well, I have a gun, I have pepper spray, I have a taser, and now I have to be able to take you into custody. And if you're trying to beat me up and assault me or don't want to go to jail, and you start fighting, you start grabbing for my guns. Now, do I know my weapon retention? Do I know how not to get it out? And the biggest thing is police officers say, I don't need hands-on DT. I don't need to be good at DT. I have a gun. Well, first of all, one, you're not always in the use of force to be able to draw your gun and shoot someone. You can't just always shoot someone to solve an issue, right? You come and you punch me. I can't just pull my gun out and shoot you every time.
Yeah.
So now I have to go hands-on with you, but then when maybe I'm getting overwhelmed, you start to go to a weapon. How do I get my gun out on time? How do I get my gun out if you have me pinned in the corner? Because I start to pull my gun out and you see that, you're going to go for my gun. And it's probably yours just as much as it's mine until I understand those concepts of how to keep it.
So when this is kind of what I want to talk to you most about, or I shouldn't say most, but I want to touch on before you have to leave. When I see you in your Instagram videos and you have your belt on and you're in a classroom,
Yep.
Did you kind of come up with a style of fighting on your own, from the jiu-jitsu, wrestling to self-defense tactics? Like, where did you initially see, because you can't, the joke, this is the joke in the wrestling room about you jiu-jitsu guys, is you can't go to your guard in a bar fight.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, how did you like make this transition and make it successful? And how do you even know, like, or you probably know now, but how did you even know?
Trial and error, training with not just jiu-jitsu guys, training with jiu-jitsu guys, training with wrestlers, training with MMA guys, with stand-up, training with other guys that are black belts or high-level wrestlers that are police officers, and just kind of sharing ideas and networking that, hey, we need to change this culture. And then putting those belts on and doing it with resistance. Like, okay, you got MMA gloves on because I can grab my gun, I can take my gun out, but I can punch you, you can punch me, you can grab my gun, and let's put ourselves in different scenarios. You have a knife somewhere concealed on your person. I don't know where it's at. You're a bad guy. I have my gun belt on. I try to arrest you. Don't let me arrest you. Right?
Yeah.
So now we're fighting. And the biggest thing what we saw was when we first started doing it and we would rely just on sport jiu-jitsu or just sport wrestling, was we would fall back to those things and completely be unaware of the weapons.
So in training, a guy would have a knife and just...
So then at some point he goes for his knife to try to stab me because I'm trying to arrest him. He wants to try to stab me to get away or not go to jail. I have to be aware that that knife's out. Now, how do I fight him with that knife? How do I get my gun? Or what if he's taking my gun? How do I stop it? So we started playing with those, and what we were seeing was that even high-level jiu-jitsu guys or high-level black belts, high-level wrestlers, once they first started doing that, they lost all awareness of the weapon. And they went into wrestling mode, or they went into jiu-jitsu mode, and then you could get the knife out and just stabbing him. You have no idea you're even stabbing a guy, right? He's still wrestling you, and you're stabbing him. Or he's doing jiu-jitsu to you, and you're like cutting his femoral arteries and stuff.
How often do you get in fist fights in the street?
So I always break it down like this. The biggest form of resistance we see in police work is what we call actively resisting. There's passive resisting, where the person's just standing there, and if you grab a hold of them physically,
tighten up their arms.
Yep. The actively resisting is where the person's actively trying not to get arrested. They're running, you tackle them. They're not trying to assault you. They're just tucking their arms underneath you, trying not to let you have their arms. They're trying to get away or not go to jail. So that's like, I would say, a huge high percentage. I can't put a number on it, but a majority of it.
Yeah.
And then there's, the actively assaultive. The guy's actively trying to assault you. And that's very minimal in the grand scheme of things. So when they're actively resisting, they do things of like tucking their arms underneath, trying to build a house and get back to their base, or they're trying to roll. They're trying not to let you get them in handcuffs. And for like wrestling, like in jiu-jitsu, like it's easy for me to put a chokehold on and submit somebody. But now to get two hands and get them both behind their back and secure them there and then get my handcuffs out and get them on, that's extremely difficult if both people are trained. If the other person's not trained, it's easier. But even like in wrestling, imagine like you get a double arm bar and you want to take big steps through and pin the guy. But if you have to hold those arms, how do you hold those arms there, get your cuffs out? And get them? So people don't realize how difficult it is to take an actively resisting subject into custody, because you have to have both hands and you have to get your cuffs on. And you have to get your cuffs out. So putting all that stuff into the rules of what it is, that's where we started just playing with that stuff. And like, what's working, what's not, and how do you do that? Pressure test it. Like Ryan and I are going to the gym today, and you're going to be the bad guy. We're going to do 20 resistance drills. I'm going to come up, and as soon as I grab a hold of your arm to put you in custody, you're going to either be passive resistance, you're going to actively resist, pull, try to fight, not beat me up, but just not let me take you into custody. Or two, you're going to start hitting me and assaulting me. Now I got to go from there. And then we'll even go and throw a weapon on you. We don't know you have a weapon that's in your pocket or a knife or even a gun. Now I have to be aware of that. You and I are fighting. I'd be aware. You're going for a gun now, Maybe you're tackling me and you're on top and I'm trying to escape and survive, not let you get my gun. Now you start going to your gun. Am I aware this is all happening? And we were seeing that they're just losing that entire awareness.
I pay attention to a lot of sociology stuff and try to figure out the state that our country's in, and a little bit of the show's political, but I don't expect you to get into that. Are you at all concerned about? So I noticed that I'm gonna guess you're like 35, 40.
Yeah, 42.
Okay, 42. So I kind of think your age group is sort of the last alpha mentality that's police officers. And are you at all? And I think that 2016 had a lot to do with it. I think that this is probably, for the first time ever, the first time the media is really against police. And I think that a lot of these type A personality people, probably like yourself, probably like Josh, Chris certainly, are starting to not, they're like, I'm not fucking doing that. So are you at all concerned about this upcoming generation of police? Because I noticed it. I remember I was out with a few girls and another guy, and we were hanging out for a couple hours, and he turned to me and was just talking about work and everything. I said, what are you doing? He said, I'm a cop for Lakewood Bus Stop. I go, get the fuck out of here. Are you really? And it's kind of worrying, because I don't think like this, but it's in the back of your mind, dude, there's no way in hell you're taking a gun away from me. There's no way in hell, if there's one last piece of pizza in your fridge, I'm eating it,
right.
That kind of thing. And I noticed that, I don't know. Have you noticed that at all?
So I teach at the academy too, so I teach all the new kids coming up, and I think it's just society as a whole. The alpha male is disappearing, or there's a lack of, or there's not as many. And you see that in sports. Football teams are merging.
Yeah.
High schools are merging sports to be able to put football teams out there.
That's a topic I've talked about in the show 60 times.
That's the same thing with police work, but police work's the same. And I think as a profession overall, we've always had this stigma or thought that, hey, we have a badge and we have a gun, so we're gonna be okay.
But that's I feel like that's changing.
And it's changing, especially more with social media. You can see, but in the end, it's, are you prepared for when that situation happens, or are you preparing on luck? And if you're preparing with just luck, then you could be that victim. Just because I train all the time doesn't mean I could be a victim of it. I could get ambushed and get shot possibly too, but I'm minimizing the percentage that the situations where I could be injured or not be able to handle myself. For instance, foot pursuits or fights or use of force reports or whatever they are, and I have my fair share every year as far as foot pursuits and guys that resist and take in custody and use of forces, and never ever is it an issue. It's you're calm. I did this yesterday.
Yep.
I took this guy down yesterday. I went to knee on top. I controlled his arms. I got him in handcuffs. I'm fighting with guys like Josh and Ron and your Shimmicks.
Who could hurt you?
And those guys are tough. If you make one mistake, they're whooping your ass. You know what I mean? And all of them have beat me at some point in a match or in a scramble or even in a a sparring round or whatever, whether we're doing wrestling or we're doing jiu-jitsu or whatever it is. But we train that way every day. The amount or percentage of bad guys or suspects that we take into custody that have a training background is so minimal that if you take a guy that comes onto the wrestling mat and he's never wrestled before, you're 20%, 10% effort, and he's in custody, he's on the ground and pinned. That's how I feel out there. You're okay, here's the guy, this guy's gonna fight, all right, gonna take him down, control him, get him in cuffs. You're not worried. There's no fear there because that he may have weapons. You haven't searched him. You have to be aware of that stuff and not get overconfident and doesn't have a weapon system on him. But what is the likelihood that he's going to be able to kick your ass? Very little, because he doesn't know any wrestling, doesn't know any jiu-jitsu, and he probably doesn't have any range training or any tactical training. So you've got to put them all together. But I think overall as a whole, the law enforcement profession is extremely undertrained. It's just like you said before, 2 weeks school and you go. So most departments across the country, and this is the culture we're trying to change, you get trained your DT in the academy, whether it's 40 hours, 80 hours, 120 hours, and then I take a vote every course I teach. How many times have you had DT training in the last 5 years? How about, I have guys 17 years that haven't done DT training. They graduated the academy 17 years ago and have not done any DT training. Do you think they're going to be good in a fight? No, they're going to suck just like the bad guy is. And now it's a shit show because we have two guys that don't know how to fight, and one of them has a gun on him, and that's a cop. The cop's bringing a gun to every fight he's in.
And the media really likes to portray police officers as like, shoot first, ask questions later. And this has always been my argument to not necessarily people on the left, but people that want to criticize police brutality and things like that. And I know the numbers, I know the statistics, I know it's incredibly low. Have you met anyone who's killed someone with a firearm?
Oh yeah,
but
across training and stuff. Yeah, so I get to train with thousands of people every year.
But
so
it's substantially low.
It's substantially low.
So my point about cops being trained is if you are going to go to your self-defense, you're going to go to your hand-to-hand combat long before you're going to go for your gun.
Correct. One. And two, even in certain situations, like maybe this guy has a knife and he's, say just a certain distance away. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're going to have your gun out. Right. He can still close that distance pretty quick. If your gun's in, he can still close that gap pretty fast with that knife. Mm-hmm. But maybe I take a better angle. I put myself behind some cover or some concealment and I put some space in between him. Mm-hmm. Maybe he drops a knife and starts coming at you. Whatever it may be, if you train consistently, the game slows down. Mm-hmm. It's not just like fear and a whirlwind, like, you're fighting for your life every time. You're going to make more sound decisions the better tactical position you put yourself in. So now it goes, let's put it all together. You train outside of work in DT, hands-on, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, sparring. Then you go to the range and you train just not flat range. You train moving and shooting. You train your fundamentals. You train off of barricades. You train communication. You train reloads. All of that kind of stuff is going to play a fact in how you use force on the street and when it comes at it. Yet there may be a situation where the guy draws a gun and you have to shoot him. That's a deadly physical force situation. There's probably no other answer to it. But sometimes if you have zero hands-on skills and the guy's kicking your ass, that might be your only answer is maybe to have to shoot the guy or to go to a taser or something else. The problem is if you don't have your hands-on skills, you have to rely on a tool. You have to. Because just think if you got drunk and wanted to take on 99% of the cops in Chicago County, you're going to win. You're going to win a hands-on fight if they don't cheat and have 2-3 guys or if they don't go to a tool. So now imagine if you're in the county and you're the first one there and your backup's 10 minutes away. Now you start kicking his ass, may he have to go to his gun and shoot you, right? So those all play effect into the better training you have, the more training you have, the more comfortable you are with your hands-on skills, the less use of force you usually have to use. And you don't have to use less force. You just have to use the amount of force that's reasonable under Graham Connor. So if I say, hey, it was a reasonable person would have done this use of force, then I'm fine without the hindsight of 2020. But the more training you have, the lower the force goes down. The more control tactics we've implemented at Jamestown and now team tactics. So say we have 2 guys that don't train a ton outside of work, but they now understand our concepts and what we're doing. If we're going to try to take you down, one guy's going to go high and then one guy's going to go low. Okay, so say I'm going to go to your legs and just bear hug and hold them. Yeah. And now the top guy is just worried about controlling your upper body is going to be better off than if I'm pulling on that arm and he's pulling on that arm and neither of us have a plan. Yeah. And you're kicking us or we're both pulling against each other. Yeah. I know I'm just going and anchoring the legs and that's my job is to anchor your hips down. And let that guy work on top.
When did you start becoming a police officer? When was your first?
I graduated the academy in May of 2001 and got hired right out of the academy.
For JPD?
No, for Lakewood Bus Die, and then I lateral transferred to Jamestown in 2005.
So you've been around before cell phones, or before smartphones, I should say.
Yeah.
How is that, have you seen that change like in the work now? I was in a mild bar fight this summer that was just, everybody was drunk and my group of friends was like a little bit sober and nothing was really going on, but I just noticed we were in an alley and just phones everywhere.
Yeah, everyone's got phones, so I always tell people.
Has it happened to you? Like,
yeah.
you've been in a physical altercation, you're like, oh,
Yeah.
great, I'm going to get fucking...
It's all right, though, because, like, I always understand that. I mean, we wear body cams.
Mm-hmm.
So everything we do is recorded,
Mm-hmm.
right? So a cell phone, you got to think, most houses now have...
the
the cameras.
Whatever, yeah.
Most businesses have cameras on there. All convenience stores have cameras on them. So you have to understand that whatever you're doing, you're on camera.
Yeah.
No matter what. And you have to just understand that if sometimes those cell phones, they only record what they want to record. They might only record a piece of it. They may not have caught the whole situation. So the biggest thing we do is we have a body cam, but it's an electronic device. It catches one angle and one angle only. It doesn't catch feelings. It doesn't catch how you are feeling. It may not even catch the right angle of, I could be facing this way and you have a gun in your hand and I turn and I shoot you, but you had threw the gun over there. So the video captures me shooting a guy without a gun. But when I was turning, you were either moving the gun up or trying to throw it and I shoot you. Now you had a gun on there. The camera didn't pick it up, but that's what occurred.
Well, my one concern about the body cams and the surveillance and the cell phones and everything is, I think, as I know for me, not, you know, I'm not in law enforcement or anything, but it's made me more timid. Like, and I'm nervous that a lot of new guys that, I mean, you definitely know that, like, if you're in hand-to-hand combat, you know the right places, you know you're not going to kill somebody, you know that you're probably not going to seriously hurt somebody. But what I get nervous about is that, you know, with like the whole police brutality thing and like the excessive use of force, somebody might be timid and might put a police officer in more danger.
Yeah, and that's a huge cause for concern. Is like they can't think about that. They have to do what's reasonable. You know, Graham Connor is the overall federal statute for what use of force is in police work, and it's a reasonable amount of force necessary. Like, if you're reasonable to do it, you're going to be okay. Don't think about, hey, I'm going to be on video, I'm going to be on this. Like, if you're doing the right thing, you're doing the right thing.
Right.
So people think that way, though. But unfortunately, sometimes people are just in it for the health insurance, dental plan, and the retirement.
I think a lot of these young kids
right?
are.
So unfortunately, maybe they're in it for the wrong reasons. I think there's a lot of good cops out there, a lot of cops that want to train and move. I'm part of a group that is called Invictus, and it's make BJJ mandatory. So, you know, we talk a lot about how we mix wrestling and jiu-jitsu together, and it's kind of called MMA, right?
Sure.
So MMA is stand-up jiu-jitsu wrestling, and they both have pros and cons. Straight jiu-jitsu, straight wrestling, straight Muay Thai boxing are all going to have faults. Nowadays, you have these guys growing up being mixed martial artists, and they're tough because they have good wrestling, they have good jiu-jitsu, they have good stand-up. But now on the street, what rules are we at? You know, so like if just let's say for jiu-jitsu, if I'm just in my guard and the wrestler's on top of me and he's just punching me and hitting me in the face and I can't sweep him, I can't, you know, submit him, he's winning the fight. He's winning that fight from there. Now, if I'm the wrestler and the jiu-jitsu gets on top and I bail to my knees and now I expose my neck, or I'm not looking and the guy draws a knife or a gun. So we have to kind of corral each like sport, jiu-jitsu, sport wrestling, and kind of corral it more towards a combative style of fighting, because you see where you're exposed in just doing sport jiu-jitsu, just doing sport wrestling, just doing sport boxing. So now if we take more of the MMA standard and then add in the unknowns of weapon systems, that's kind of how we've started training for police work.
So have you, I know that you're bigger into wrestling now because your daughter is having a lot of success in the women's division in high school. What's the biggest difference that you notice about wrestling? Because I actually have
Pace.
I've told a very funny story about you on the podcast before. I rolled with you one time, and here's the thing about wrestling. If you come to a wrestling room, so say you're from Randolph or whatever, and I'm from Faulkner, it becomes an instant dick measuring contest. I'm grabbing you as hard as you can.
Right.
And I remember, I think I was telling Rob Hugas this. I said, I rolled a J one time, and he just felt weak. Like he didn't. And then I remember 35 seconds later, I was blacked out. And because when you tie up with somebody in wrestling,
right,
it's bang. It's constantly banging.
It's that pace, I think. So like,
you think wrestling's quicker paced?
Oh, much harder paced drilling, I think. So, but now if you look like like Josh does a good job he starts all the classes when he teaches.
Mm-hmm.
He starts all his training on the feet, and it's all drilling a wrestling shot takedown. That's where most fights start.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you gotta be. If you look at like Atos, Andre Galvao, all those guys are training wrestling as much as they are jiu-jitsu. They're training on their feet as much as they are on the ground. So I think what you're seeing now is the two sports kind of merging together.
Oh, I'm seeing it a lot.
But like when you cross train in jiu-jitsu, it's more of like, hey, how's it going? We're gonna train, and it it starts out light. Where when you see guys like start to cross train in wrestling, like in a different room, they're like tense and hard, like right away.
Yeah.
So it's just I think a different atmosphere, and I think jiu-jitsu could get better by drilling faster and harder. Mm-hmm. And I think that when it comes over to the wrestling part, you're starting to see jiu-jitsu crawl into wrestling with like your funk wrestling guys,
for
right?
Sure, yeah.
Like even like Nolf and those guys, they're doing a lot of funk wrestling. Like his danger roll. Yeah. His danger roll is a rolling armbar from off the bat.
I actually just
he just doesn't.
I was actually just talking about the other day. Was it Nolf or Nickel?
One of them.
So kids hitting in a high crotch.
And he does butterfly sweep, right?
No, not even that. So he's kid's hitting a high crotch. He's lifting that trail leg and he's catching him in an armbar, but he's locked on the bicep, so there's no pressure against the joints. And they found out ways to get backs legally with an armbar. Yeah. And then a lot of the takedowns now, kids are. It's sort of weird. I think that in jiu-jitsu you definitely have a lot to worry about, and I think that's the difference in pace. And obviously in wrestling you have a lot to worry about too, but you're not going to choke me out. Yeah. You know what I mean? If I'm on my elbows,
if you're stomach down or your base out, you don't got to worry about it.
Yeah, and so I think that might be a big difference in the pace. Is that jiu-jitsu, like you get your arm ripped off. Like in a wrestling match, you're not going to rip my arm off. Yeah. So I think that a lot of kids that have jiu-jitsu backgrounds and in wrestling now kind of have a more fearless mentality. They're not worried about the neck being exposed. Right. And I mean, you're seeing, I say it all the time, that in the sport of wrestling, these kids have forgotten more than I've ever learned. Like, I mean, the amount that they're rolling around, the amount that they're willing to do. In college, the danger rule, I don't know if you're familiar with that, if your back's exposed, that's sort of slowing it down, but like you're seeing I don't know if you watch Yanni at all, if you watch college wrestling.
Yeah, I watch him. I have Flow Wrestling, so I watch.
Do you actually? Okay, cool.
Because
it's a Flow grappling.
So controlling the human body is you control the head and you control the hips, right? And you control posture and underhooks and overhook swing. The difference between grappling and wrestling is just rule set. Yeah. Okay, like what positions I can be compared to what positions I can be in wrestling are just different. But like I'm just trying to be a student of that game too, because I'm helping coach like up in Maple Grove, volunteering to help coach. Obviously my daughter's up there, so I'm like constantly studying wrestling now. Yeah. I think having a good background in jiu-jitsu and just grappling and concepts of angles, barriers, posture, it's easier for me to pick up faster. I mean, that's only the second year I've been helping, but I feel like I've learned a ton because I just pick it up like that.
I think that from a pure spectator sport, I think that wrestling is like, just because it's simpler. You know what I mean? Like the 2-point takedown, right? The 3-point back, everything. I think it's a lot more entertaining to watch because I was doing jiu-jitsu for a minute. I was training with Rob a little bit. I did a tournament. And I just followed a bunch of jiu-jitsu accounts. I had Flow Wrestling, you get Flow Grappling and everything. So I was like, oh, I'm going to be the jiu-jitsu guy. I'm going to know everybody. And I was just like, not into it at all. As far as a spectator. But
even for me, sometimes it's tough to watch, depending on what rule set